And one of the things that can't be attacked is your self-custody Bitcoin. And one of the things that can be attacked is the ETF. You can't be exposed to that. That's my view. It's not a good idea. And by the way, that'll hit MSTR too. It'll probably hit other stuff as well. Friends and enemies, welcome back. Canadian Bitcoiners podcast.
Friends and enemies, welcome to the CBP. Wanna be better informed? Listen to Len and Joey. Sponsors taken care of right off the top. Bull, Bitcoin, and easy DNS. The media is feeding the slop. It doesn't matter what topics discussed. Quality entertainment and information you can trust.
That's being planned or at least discussed. You know, we're not going to allow
quality entertainment and information you can trust. Send the guy some value, boost him with some sats. Bitcoin is a scarcity asset. I mean, it's just a fact. Geopolitical, national, down to the local cloud.
Friends and enemies, welcome back. CBP, not Len, but another familiar face here. Boomer in the chat.
Not in the chat.
In the other window today, yeah, live and direct. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin Treasury companies. There's been obviously like what I would call, honestly, like an irrational surge in the popularity of these things over the last, I don't know, what now, year-ish, something like that. And, you know, when I think about whether or not this is something we need to be concerned about as Bitcoiners, and I think also potentially as equity holders in some of these companies, I'm not sure where I come down. So we're going to get into all that. First, though, the sponsors, EasyDNS. I mean, I always talk about EasyDNS. They're the best place for you to run a website, store your content, store your business info, your all that stuff. Mark is the friendly neighborhood registrar. We use them, obviously, for CanadianBitcoiners.com, where we very rarely post because, let's face it, time is scarce, especially for Len and I these days. But you can go there and either register a domain or bring a domain that you registered somewhere else and get it onto EasyDNS's books because, I mean, why wouldn't you? If you're a Bitcoiner, virtual private server stuff available for you. Lots of options, Bitcoin nodes, Nostr relays, BTC Pay servers, among other things. And of course, domain share and easy mail and other security suite options for a couple extra bucks. Secure your data, man. Like, it's worth it. You're going to wind up paying either because you got by somebody who was after your mailing list or after your domain and spoofed you, or you're going to pay a couple bucks up front to someone like Mark and make sure this never happens. And of course, Mark, you know, in the spirit of the show today, should mention Bitcoin Treasury over there at EasyDNS. So go there, use our promo code CBP Media, get half off your first round of buys. I don't know, Boomer, you want to do the bull read? I mean, I did one of them. Bull Bitcoin's the other sponsor. What do you think about Bull Bitcoin?
Yeah, check out their new app. I just got the Liquid wallet. It's sharp as shit.
Ooh.
It's really nice. The new website is up. There's a redesign, beautiful. I mean, what can you say about Bull Bitcoin? They're like the coolest guys, man.
I'll tell you, we have to say more about them. That's where I'll start. I would just also add...
Your sponsor, not mine.
I know. I would also add that if you want to use Bitcoin in a way that is a little more friendly than just buying Bitcards, you can go there and use their bills service, which is sick. I mean, if you want to pay any of your fiat bills, you could probably do it with gift cards, let's face it. But if you want to pay some real bills that like actual adults also have, mortgages, university tuition, cell phones, stuff like this, property tax, I'm pretty sure is on there. Just go and use your Bitcoin and do it. They'll take care of it for you. Everything is going on in the background and in the front of house. Nothing changes, man. You can't beat these guys. They are running the best place in the world to buy and use your Bitcoin. And like we mentioned, crazy. They have a nice new app there. It looks very sharp.
They're in France. They're in Mexico.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Where are they at now?
They are kings of the planet, man. Okay. And I'll just also note that extreme in the best ways. So go use our promo code. I think it's CBP, but it's in the description of the show for sure. And you get 25% off your first. No, you get 20% off your fees for life, which is great. That's a lot better than the $21. So I would be using that if I was you guys. Okay, Boomer. Let's
start off. We got to start off by saying the obvious. Like, this is not financial advice.
Nothing we say here is financial advice. Yeah.
Like, we spent the time preparing for the show talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, you probably shouldn't be listening to us if you have your life savings.
Anything can happen. Yeah, on this show now, it's a free for all. I don't know where I want to start because I look at like I'll give you like my sort of overview. Me and you were in a couple of the same group chats, including the now infamous MSTR bait. where people are constantly talking about, but started just as MicroStrategy, but has since expanded to other Bitcoin equities, specifically the Bitcoin Treasury companies. There's people in there tweeting out ticker updates and quotes from Japan, from apps I've never seen. Stuff
in
that looks
Japanese.
Like in Japanese. That's right. Yeah. You need like a translation service or something on your phone to see what the fuck they're saying. It's every day. And because of the time difference between here and Japan, obviously, in a lot of cases, it's become a 24-hour obsession, not just for our little group chat, but on Twitter, there's tons of these things. There's MSTR True North, there's Bitcoin Intelligence, there's all sorts of different groups and, popular Twitter accounts and YouTube channels and all this stuff. Not to mention that when I'm looking over, what hashtags to put on the show, I almost always get recommended MSTR, MicroStrategy, and Michael Saylor. Yeah. So no matter what we're talking about, I could have a show on housing or a show on birth rates or a show on anything. And unless we're talking about Michael Saylor piping enough women to start a small empire, there's just no reason for his name to be in there. But it's suggested to me almost every time because of the content.
All you got to do is look at Simply Bitcoin's thumbnails.
This is it, right? Michael Saylor's on fire in the vault, like the guys that Bitcoin Bugle say. So I don't know if this is good or bad. And as I kind of continue to flesh out my thoughts here, I'll just kind of, also point out that oftentimes the crowd is not as well-informed and, overall correct as they may think. Now, there's two ways to look at that statement. One is that the crowd is, it seems like anyone talking about Bitcoin or related equities is piling into these companies hand over fist. The other way to look at it is the crowd may be the people who are not, right? That's actually the vast majority of investors out there, people who think MSTR is a flywheel scam or a Ponzi or you name it. And, there's a data point I want to show you. Someone from our community sent me this today, and I'll show it. It's a rather interesting bit of content from a small company in the UK. And this guy's small company in the UK. Yeah. You've seen this, I guess, eh?
Yeah, I was on that chat. I think that was a reply to one of my tweets, I think.
Was it? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna try and find it. Of course I'm ill prepared for this show because my daughter is just finishing dinner around the time that we start. Okay, here it is. I'm gonna pull it up.
Playoff basketball season.
All these things are more important than the podcast.
Fantasy football starting up soon.
Never in doubt. Never in doubt. People should be drafting Genty early. Okay, so here's the, oh my God, I added the wrong window here. This is an interesting thing because this company really has no business buying Bitcoin. This guy doesn't seem to have any interest, broadly speaking, in Bitcoin. His company was not talking about Bitcoin before. And now we have this guy from the US of A, or from the UK, I should say. I'll just read it for people who are on audio. This is from Glenn Goodman on Twitter. Want to hear some BTC craziness? Last month, a bloke called Andrew Webley was running his tiny web design firm in Guildford, UK, with net assets of less than £50,000. He listed the firm on the stock market, raised about 5 million quid from investors, and spent it on Bitcoin. So this company, Smarter Web Company PLC, I think that's programmable logic controllers, right? So he's making like hardware. Or maybe it's not if it's a web design firm. We got to figure out what that PLC stands for. Is basically a mini MicroStrategy, and Mr. Webley is a mini Saylor. But here's the crazy part. The share price has rocketed in its first few days, and that 5 million quids worth of Bitcoin now has a market cap of $175 million. That's what the market says it's worth because people keep buying the shares. So, shrug emoji after that. I think this might be the most overvalued stock I've ever seen. Just to put it all in perspective, last month in the company's retail investor IPO document, it boasts that Andrew Webley, founder of the Smarter Web Company, has committed to invest a minimum of £30,000 through his ISA. And now his company is worth $175 million. So I'm going to retweet that. Thank you to whoever pointed that out to me. This to me,
that doesn't end well.
So what?
Might,
so what does
it
end
might,
well?
But
why does the other stuff end well if that doesn't end well? Why does Semler Scientific end well if that guy doesn't end well?
Yeah, but there's a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Before the show, I actually was preparing for this, and I wanted to see what kind of growth we've seen in publicly traded companies holding Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So take a guess out there, Joey, and for everybody listening in at home, On August 25th, 2025, how many Bitcoin do you think were held by publicly traded companies?
It's a good question. In August of 25,
August of 21.
21. I mean, I have it up on the screen here.
You're looking at it right now.
It's a lot, yeah. But it's not as much as you it's definitely not as much now. What does it say?
200,000.
200,000. It's really
200,000.
That's peanuts.
You know where we're at? Do you know where we're at now?
Let me take a guess here, and I'll give you my thinking. I want to know if this is corporate treasuries that are publicly traded, or is it also so it doesn't account for private corporate
holdings
treasuries
by publicly traded companies.
Okay, so
this is not including private equity. This is not including guys like Mark Jekovic at EasyDNS.
Yeah. Okay,
this is publicly traded companies, Bitcoin on their balance sheet.
Not
all of them are using a Saylor type of strategy to sell bonds or anything. Just publicly traded companies that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet.
I think this number's got to be 10 times this now. 2 million ish.
No, it's not that.
How much is it?
Jeez, a little over 800,000.
That's it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. See, 805,000. And of that 805,000, 580,000 of it is MicroStrategy.
So there's two strategies that we've seen
but that's still 4x, Joey.
It's a lot, and it's only been 4 years.
4x.
And don't forget, there's still I keep on hearing this talk about Saylor buying in 2020 or 21 when no one else wanted it and no one else understood it, and as if this has really changed. I don't actually think that outlook has changed for many public companies. Now, I mentioned Semler there; they're fun to pick on because they don't it's not a real company. Okay, Semler's not a real company; it's a Bitcoin acquisition vehicle now.
Semler was cash flow positive.
So was MicroStrategy. But let's be serious about where the market cap comes from. It doesn't come from whatever the fuck Semler Scientific was doing.
Semler's not holding that many coins.
No, but where do you think? Okay, let me say this, and then we'll talk about some of these valuation stuff, because I think this is part of the conversation. There's two things that people are doing, that companies are doing when it comes to strategies to acquire. One is they're using their cash to buy Bitcoin. Fine, that's a little less risky.
Way less risky
than the other strategy, which is issuing bonds, long dated converts, you name it.
Yes.
And using that infusion of cash, let's say, to buy Bitcoin. And the only way that really keeps working is if the price keeps going up, right? You have to outperform something to get that strategy to work for you long term. Then there's now another red flag for me, there's people waving red flags in my head all the time over this. Saylor talking about stuff and metrics I've never heard of. Came up with this Bitcoin per share metric. I think that's a bullshit.
We're at Torque now.
Torque is fucking brutal too. But I thought Bitcoin per share was a bullshit metric, honestly. Because if I care about Bitcoin per share, why would I not just buy my own and hold it? Now he can make the case that it's high beta, it's volatility is vitality, whatever other, I don't know, advertising campaign that he was running for his stock over the last 2 years or so. But when I look at these things, and then Bitcoin Torque, obviously we should talk about too. What I see is,
can you explain it to me, because I still don't fully understand.
I can't. No, I can't explain it. No, I can't. I looked at it. I'm in a group chat with a couple really sharp guys who have Bloomberg terminals and are Bitcoiners, and they don't get it either. And that tells me these things start to worry me a little bit. And I know in our chat, there's people talking about how Bitcoin Torque is this metric and the normies don't get it. And there's paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs from people comparing it to, different strategies from bygone eras that didn't go well because they weren't backed by Bitcoin and blah, blah. I've heard it all. Okay. But the idea that at the core of all these things is that I should assume more risk to buy your stock instead of just buying Bitcoin, because the fiat payoff may be more significant down the road. Do I have that right? Is that a fair way to articulate what's going on with these equities?
And you can hold the price exposure to Bitcoin in tax advantaged accounts, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't, if you're locked into an RSP or a TFSA, and maybe you want to do something a little bit different than just holding the Bitcoin ETF, then these things are options.
Okay, but I've heard this before. I don't I'm trying to get a friend to join us here, a guy who's familiar to people who watch and listen to this show. But I don't think that it's fair to say that this is like a vehicle for people who want it in their retirement account. I mean, maybe it is, but can we really say that like that's where the equity price is coming from? This is like
No.
the case. So like what I want to know is where the fuck is this price coming from?
Simply Bitcoin aren't putting Michael Saylor thumbnails because of people wanting to put Bitcoin in their IRAs.
Like it's not hard.
No. I mean, look, how many companies, publicly traded companies, I said before, there's about 805,000 coins being held.
Yes.
How many companies? Take a guess.
Fuck, I don't know. 15?
No, about 87.
87 companies. Okay.
I count 87 because now GameStop is in there now too.
Okay. Yeah. So if you count every company with at least one Bitcoin, then it's a big.
Yeah, the minimum on the chart I'm looking at here is like 20 Bitcoin.
Okay.
So anything from 20 Bitcoin to Saylor with almost 600,000. So there's a slightly under 100 of them.
And how are these
now,
companies?
Of those, how many of them are miners? Bitcoin miners
out of 87,
quite a few. Like I'm looking honestly, like I used to kind of be involved, not involved, but I used to actually give a shit about the mining stocks.
Yeah, we talked about it over the years.
And I Bob Burnett, he completely changed my view on this, and now I don't pay any attention to it whatsoever. So some of these companies here I'm not familiar with, but there's quite a few of these 80 something companies that are miners. So right off the bat, you can throw those out.
Yeah, agreed.
Me personally.
How do you square, no pun intended, the performance of like Block over the course of the last 5 years? A company that like
it's wild.
Well, the problem is like they're not.
A lot of people got burnt in that company.
They're not blowing anything out of the water. They're like objectively a better company at its like on the cornerstones, on the cinder blocks, on the fucking studs of the company than MSTR. No doubt about that. Okay. They understand Bitcoin better than Saylor does, I think. I mean, Jack talking some crazy shit the last couple of days about losing seeds, but not as crazy as Saylor the other day talking about not doing proof of reserves. We can talk about proof of reserves.
We can talk about that speech too. I listened to it right before coming on.
Yeah, so we should talk about it.
I'm neutral. I'm not as negative as I was the first time I heard it. I listened to it again and I thought about it a little bit.
Well, I think you're wrong. And so like Square and Block and whatever that company is called now, like better studs, better core business, better understanding of Bitcoin, and like didn't outperform anyone. Like why are people buying Semler or Metaplanet over Block? Like this is another thing that concerns me.
Because they're
like,
a lot smaller.
Yeah, I know, but like it's
like
still
like Semler and Metaplanet are tiny microcap compared to Block.
Yes.
The proportion of Bitcoin how many I'm looking at it right now? I think it's around 8,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8,600. They 8,600. Block hold 8,600 coins. Now, 8,600 coins represents a fraction of their total market value. Same with Tesla.
Yeah.
Tesla hold. How many does Tesla hold?
Yeah, they're there. They were
11,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Tesla's 11,000 Bitcoin is a drop in the fucking bucket. It's nothing.
So
for the overall valuation of the company?
Okay, so we're getting somewhere here.
It's very high, right? Like Semler, Metaplanet. Obviously, MicroStrategy is the leader in this, where the value of their Bitcoin is essentially their market cap.
Yeah. So we're getting somewhere here. So it's not only that I need to hold Bitcoin as a treasury, right? As a treasury asset. It's not only that I need to have it, on my balance sheet, on my books, but I also have to have nothing else, basically, is what you're telling me.
To incorporate Saylor's strategy? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So
because you're selling volatility. And the only way you're going to get that volatility...
this fucking selling volatility. Like, I don't...
True.
Okay, I get it. But, like, why... Again, my big problem with all of this is we are inviting... Like, I say we. I'm kind of talking about the royal we here, Bitcoiners in general.
Yep.
Are we not inviting problems? Pouring billions of dollars of capital? We are. And what problems do you think we're inviting?
Okay, first of all, do you ever watch The Wire?
No.
Never watched The Wire. You got to watch The Wire.
I know.
Fuck watching basketball tonight. You watch The Wire.
Is it on Netflix? Maybe I'll watch it if it's on Netflix.
No, it's on like Crave, I think.
whatever.
And
I'll
it's
pirate
an
it.
old HBO show. It's the greatest piece of fiction ever made. The Wire
Okay.
is the most amazing TV show. There's never been another movie, another TV show half as good as The Wire.
Okay.
In The Wire, Omar Little famously said to Brother Mouzone, worrying about you is like worrying if the sun gonna come up. And that's how I feel about these companies getting into Bitcoin.
Okay.
Now, a lot of the Bitcoiners are all up in, oh my God, the suits are here and look what they're doing, the financialization. It's like, did you guys actually think that Bitcoin could go from zero market cap to we are using hyper Bitcoinize everything, we're using Bitcoin transactions for everything, and the suits wouldn't get involved?
It's just going to happen at farmers markets.
They wouldn't find a way to get rich off this? Did you really believe that? Like, I never worried about it.
Yeah. Okay.
They were always going to come. They were always going to happen. These things were always, if it wasn't going to be Saylor, it was going to be somebody else. It was always going to happen. And I'm telling you, I'm looking at the chart right now. There's 87 companies here, 86 companies, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Some of these people are going to get burnt.
Okay.
Probably a lot of them.
Why?
Because some of these holders of Bitcoin are going to sell when things go bad. And they've leveraged themselves either through convertibles that are never going to convert, so they become debt that they have to service, or they're like your buddy in England over there, whatever
he's your buddy,
he has,
buddy.
he doesn't do anything. So right now he's worth $120 million. So he's out partying in Vegas and he's buying a Lambo and he's buying an office and he's hiring staff because he's $100 million company. And then when the price of Bitcoin crashes, his stock is going to crash and he's not going to have any money to pay his staff or to pay his Lambo. So if you bought the stock, you're shit out of luck, right? But that doesn't mean that all of these companies are going to zero. And I don't know which ones are.
Okay.
If I had to bet, if you're listening, guys, just assume that Joey and I own all of these things.
I don't know. I only own the only treasury company I own is MSTR.
I'm not telling anybody what I own. So just assume I own everything. Assume I own nothing. Like, just don't. I'm not picking favorites here. But it's true that some of these companies are going to be forced to sell, and some of these companies are properly set up to hold through the bad times.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Block, and like I'm critical of Jack Dorsey as well, and I'm critical of that company, of just like the point of sale terminals that they've had. And it's taken this long for them to get Bitcoin.
Huge announcement today. It's fucking 5 years late.
5 years late, right? At least 5 years late. I've been going to farmers markets for 5 years telling farmers, it's like, yeah, do you want to accept Bitcoin? And all of them have a Square terminal.
Yeah.
Right. Well, how easy would it be if they just had a Lightning terminal built in that would... But so I'm critical. I'm as critical of Jack Dorsey as anybody. But that being said, those guys did not sell their coins in the last bear market.
No, they didn't. You're right. There's some credit to there, I suppose.
They held their way through, and possibly held their way through because the 8,000 Bitcoin that they held was actually not all that substantial to their overall market cap. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But they did better than Tesla. Tesla at one point held 50,000 coins. And now they're down to 12 or 13.
Yeah, over the the mining or something, energy usage and mining.
Yeah,
I forget what the
stupid reason.
Yeah, but they were actually short for cash. I think when Tesla Q was still prevalent on Twitter, they were saying that they could say whatever they want about green and Bitcoin mining, but they were short a bunch of money and needed a cash infusion, and so that's how they ended up getting it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, 40-50% on that trade. And
so how many of these companies that are holding Bitcoin right now are going to be short Bitcoin, short cash in the next bear market? And I don't know when the next bear market's going to come.
All the miners will be for sure, right? They're forced sellers.
They're forced sellers no matter what.
Yeah.
So, but we already excluded them because but like take any one of these companies at random, like you don't know, right? Now, someone like Semler, I will support Semler. Defend
Semler, who
I think he's done the work. I think Eric Semler has done the work.
Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not. Anyone who puts Natalie Brunell on their board has not done the work.
It wasn't a great look for him.
It's retarded. And I'm so sick of these guys, like clearly trying to pump the price of their stock with every tool except actually running a successful company. Now,
but it is a successful company. Now it's a bit of a zombie company where they're cash flow positive and they're kind of stuck. Like they can't really grow their business that much without massive investment in something, and then and for those listening, Semler Scientific, they make medical equipment.
Exactly.
Some sort of diagnostic. I'm not 100. I used to
I think
know,
it's like tabletop medical equipment. I'm not sure if it's anything more than that.
But whatever they do, they make one specific thing that is quite popular, and they do sell these things, and they're cash flow positive.
Yeah.
They minimal debt.
Yeah.
But they were stuck. They were never going to grow out of that. Right. And that's very much a very similar story to what MicroStrategy was, right?
For sure. Now, okay, let me ask something. When I hear shit like Bitcoin torque and whatever else this guy said, I love the volatility is vitality thing. Cracks me up every time. There's some other good stuff that came out in the last earnings call that I thought was just like, this guy's lost his fucking mind. Then you talked about the proof of reserves thing the other day. And I thought, even if you think that proof of reserves is unimportant, or, as he said, the shareholders don't care about proof of reserves. They care about basically the price of the stock, right? It's doable to do proof of reserves. And the excuses he gave on the security side, I thought were not very good. It exposes our addresses. It enables trolls and all these different things. I just don't think that matters. And when I hear him say stuff like, if we expose our addresses, it's a security risk. Well, not really. Your addresses are already out there, right? Arkham is pretty sure. I think they have about 87, 88% of the coins total bought. I've heard people say, the Saylor simps say that if he exposes the addresses, then the addresses can be monitored, and then you establish basically a pattern of when those addresses are accessed. And that tells you when the keys are out and when the keys are away. And you can maybe make a move and try and get access to those addresses if you're, an advanced private actor or something. But I just that doesn't resonate. None of that resonates with me. Now, he's obviously got much more to be concerned about than you or I on the security side. But, I'm not going to say you're a Saylor simp. I don't think you are. But no. I think it's fair to say that, like, you and me both have this view that he should do the reserves. But do you feel the same? You don't feel the same I do about it. You said you just watch that speech again and you've sort of taken a different view. What is your view?
Not your keys, not your coins.
Yeah.
So everybody that holds any of these companies is aware of that risk, or should be aware of that risk right off the bat. Now, I listened to it twice, and the first time I was 100% in your camp. I was like, this is bullshit. Like, just knowing knowing what the addresses are, that doesn't give anybody access to anything. Right? And that's Metaplanet are doing it, right? Yeah. Like, it's right. So it's not like other people aren't doing it, but the rationale that Saylor did give was rational to me. Like, it was, like you said, they don't want them tracked because now they can be tracked going backwards and forwards.
So what?
Like, for whatever reason, maybe they don't want a proprietary knowledge of like how they do their UTXO management. Maybe they're doing something like we don't need to know.
The addresses are out there. They're out there. Like Arkham has the addresses, and a number of other artistes on the internet, seem to have found these things. So
then what's the point? Then why would they need to do that? Now MicroStrategy is a NASDAQ listed company.
Yeah.
They are audited by a Big Four auditing firm.
That's what he said too. Our shareholders care more about the audit than they do about the POR. Yeah, he mentioned that.
And the CEO, the CFO, CEO sign off on this shit. And if anything is wrong, they're criminally liable. Like, that is
you're going
fraud.
to jail. Yeah.
That's fraud. Mm. So, am I 100% sure that they hold the keys? That they hold all those coins? No. But if I'm a MicroStrategy holder,
do you care that he was found guilty of fraud in early aughts? Like, does anyone care about this? That he's like not a suspected fraudster, but like a known convicted fraudster? Does no one care? No one minds that part? Like, no one talks about that?
And that's not even the sketchiest thing about it.
What's the sketchiest thing?
You don't think he might be CIA?
I mean, everyone talks about the proximity to the Quantico
Langley.
building, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Is it possible? Honestly, there's a greater
for people who don't
probability
know,
for me.
can we just talk about this fraud thing? Like Saylor was convicted of financial fraud, financial misdeeds in his capacity as MicroStrategy founder and CEO in 2001 or 2002, something like that.
Serve no jail time.
Okay, but like no one serves jail time. Only you and me are going to jail for fraud. Okay, no one else is going.
Well,
to
we
jail.
might be going to jail for what we say tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Mike Saylor and Quantico probably at my fucking doorstep. Like he's already done this once, okay? And so the other thing that bothers me about Bitcoiners, again, I own MSTR, okay? I've said on the show, my co-host finds it distasteful that I own any equities at all, but I own MSTR and I still buy MSTR every week. But the idea that Bitcoiners are a slay your heroes blob online, killing everyone from Trace Mayer to Roger Ver to Peter McCormick to who knows who else. This guy shows up with a fraud charge, is the guy who's shepherding the corporate masses to Bitcoin, and no one's looking at this guy with a second glance. I don't know. To me, I look at that and I think this unwillingness, and it's not just the unwillingness to do proof of reserves. I think it's the general unwillingness to engage in debate. And I've said this on the show a bunch. He just goes on these interviews.
You've been dead on with this.
Yeah, because he just doesn't care. He steamrolls whoever he talks to, and he has a narrative to push, and he pushes it, and that's it. And I'm arguing with like people who are messaging me. I see my Twitter fucking messages too. Anyway, he pushes a narrative, and the narrative is always one-sided, 1 hour long, and one interview deep, and that's it. It's Sed Youngelman, it's Lavera, and I talked to Sed about this in Montreal last year, and he agreed. He's like, I wanted to ask the guy more questions, but what are you gonna do once he starts? Like, you can't stop him. I sympathize with that. We've had guests that I disagree with sometimes, and I'm not in the business of engaging for the sake of an argument. I'm in the business of giving people a chance to speak their mind and do long form, and so we do that. But
the only guy that pushed back was Saifedean
and Marty. I still point to Marty years ago when Mike came on the scene, Mike was talking about sanctioned mining and the mining council, and Marty was like, you are fucking wrong about this. And Mike couldn't handle the heat that day from a young Marty Bent. And so I doubt very much that from a wiser, more experienced Marty Bent, or from any of these guys who he's actually spoken to and done interviews with, he could handle a rebuttal. But you know who he does take rebuttals from, Boomer?
Who's that?
Who do you think he takes rebuttals from? When he does interviews with this person, who do you think he actually lets speak? Maybe Natalie Brunell? Natalie fucking Brunell. Semler board member. You know, like, all this stuff just rubs me the wrong way. And I got to be honest, I've said this before on the show. I made a nice little chunk of change buying and selling MSTR last year, and it owes me nothing. But I would caution people now who are thinking to themselves, this is going to be another 5-bagger or whatever it was for us, you know, a 10-bagger, I think even was probably closer. But I caution people about that now. Things have changed a bit. And the other thing I would say to people who are buying MSTR because it's a Bitcoin play, there's a lot of Bitcoin plays that don't talk about Bitcoin torque. You know, he's got a lot of competition now, and that competition may do proof of reserves. That competition may encourage a proof of reserves requirement. Oftentimes we talk about how legislation around Bitcoin, especially in the United States, especially from the SEC, has changed in a favorable way over the last few years. And that's true. But it hasn't just changed.
Will the competition ever get to 600,000?
They may not. But I think pushing MicroStrategy to be transparent with their Bitcoin vis-a-vis legislation is probably a logical next step. And I'd be surprised if we don't see it, because the value of these companies is tied entirely to the stack. And the stack is, you know, it's Schrodinger's Bitcoin, right? It's here when we report our financials, but we can't show you any other time, and we won't tell you where it is.
I'm not 100% sure these aren't Uncle Sam's coins.
Yeah, okay.
And I've been consistent with that from the beginning. That, like, I'm not 100% sure that MicroStrategy is the vessel for which the United States government is using to collect Bitcoin.
I like this theory.
Right?
Yeah.
And I may or may not be a shareholder in MicroStrategy, and I may or may not have been a shareholder of MicroStrategy for a long time. and I may or may not be biased because I see the returns that I've gotten on that stock. but I'm well aware that I don't own Bitcoin. I own MicroStrategy.
Right.
Like that is not the same thing. And I'm confident. Well, I don't know how confident. I'm equally as confident that I'm going to be paid out in cash for my MicroStrategy shares than I would be if I had a BlackRock ETF.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I'll say flat out, I do not have a BlackRock ETF because we don't do
ETFs.
I ethically don't align with that company, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Fidelity is better. So like if you're going to hold a Bitcoin ETF, I would say do your research on the companies, and I prefer Fidelity.
NFA.
Right? Not financial advice. Right? Just do your own advice. Do your own work. But with MicroStrategy, I'm under no illusion that that is not Bitcoin that I own.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is a derivative of Bitcoin at best. It's more or less a derivative of the volatility of Bitcoin than it is the derivative of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think about it. And at any time, I realized that I could open up my Wealthsimple account or my Questrade account or my TD Ameritrade account. If I don't own any of these things, but if I did, that those shares no longer exist, and they're now Donald Trump's coins, and I've been paid out in cash for them.
How do you feel about the key man risk with MSTR? Like if Mike drops dead tomorrow after he has like another pizza party on his yacht and things get a little carried away.
That was also a bad look.
Let's say he invites Stefan Diggs and there's some unidentified, bump and run in a bag on the yacht, and he gets a little frisky and ends up overboard. He's the third season of White Lotus or whatever. Like what happens to the stock then? What is the plan? Do people not think about this? Mike Saylor's not a spring chicken, like anything can happen.
There definitely is a cult of personality with that stock, right? That is his stock.
Yeah.
But much like Apple was with Steve Jobs, when Steve Jobs left it to Timmy Apple, it went just fine for shareholders.
Yeah, so far, yeah, fair.
So far, so I'm confident that I'm confident that the keys are well taken care of.
Okay, but like, hear me out on this. When you watch the MSTR quarterly reports, right, the quarterly releases, it's basically just an hour and a half Saylor seminar on Bitcoin every time, right? He's talking about Bitcoin for the company, Bitcoin as a store of value. He's talking about how other companies should adopt it. He's really the guy holding the banner for Bitcoiners in a lot of ways. I fully admit this as a guy who's benefited not only on the MSTR side, but certainly on the Bitcoin side. Like we preach spot buys on this show. You preach spot buys when you're on the air with us and on the air other places. And I think everybody does that. We've all benefited from Saylor's willingness to put himself out there. And, by putting himself out there, he's really done us a lot of good, right? He's done a lot of good stuff for us. Do you think like Fong or whatever that guy's name is could make the same hour and a half presentation about Bitcoin? Do you think he can be the same evangelist that Mike is for Bitcoin with companies? He can't. And so my sort of concern is not just that it's negative for MicroStrategy. It's that if we lose this guy who seems to be convincing many millions of people at this point that Bitcoin is a thing that need to be invested in both personally and as a corporation, we will suffer for it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Then somebody else will rise up.
Who's rising up? I don't know. Where is the guy rising up?
You and Len. When the CBP goes public and then you buy out Len, maybe you'll be out there like pitching CBP shares.
I'm on Money Talks tomorrow. I got to come up with a Mike Saylor. I haven't decided. Talking to the Money Talks audience is fun because they are not like you and I, obviously, in a lot of ways. I mean, they're certainly not our demo, but they're also just not as invested in like any of this stuff as we are. They're not terminally online. They're not looking at their phone while they're taking a shit like we are. And sometimes I think about how to talk to them. And I listen to Mike's show all the time, and there's a lot of smart people on there who have really strong opinions, negative opinions about Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, both the company and the man. They point to stuff like the fraud. They point to stuff like the insane new financial metrics he's inventing to try and like pump up the price of his stock. So talking to them, sometimes I think about whether or not I should address like strategy and Saylor. And I don't know if I will tomorrow or not, but I have this feeling that the Lord is going to speak to me overnight and make a suggestion one way or the other. And I'm kind of leaning toward doing it and just saying it's not lost on me, and it's not lost on a lot of Bitcoiners, that Michael Saylor is, in the most generous interpretation and acquired taste. And for a lot of people, that taste is even more difficult to acquire because the index investing they've been told to do has failed them in a lot of ways compared to MicroStrategy. The real estate they were told to buy at 2020, 2021, because it was a great investment as rates were coming down, is getting
rates
nuked.
are going to stay down forever.
Is getting nuked by Bitcoin and by MSTR. And a lot of people now are starting to realize that this is the wave of the future. And a lot of traditional financial people just, for lack of a better term, they just fucking missed it. And so, they're sour. And I sometimes consider whether or not Saylor, in terms of bringing people into the fold for Bitcoin, is a positive or a negative. Once you're here, you either love him or hate him, but he's pumping your bags. But if you're not here, then it's a lot harder to convince people that this is a guy they should listen to. And I just, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it seems to me to be the case. Like, anyone I talk to about Bitcoin always mentions Saylor and how fucking weird they think he is and how out to lunch they think he is. And I can kind of appreciate the sentiment, honestly.
Yeah, he's different, that's for sure. But how many people actually do understand what they're doing over there at MicroStrategy?
I don't know.
Strategy.
Very
few.
You think?
Very few people. Really
you mean like outside of
the actual?
Yeah.
No, like
okay.
the strategy. Like MNAV. When MNAV blows up higher, they issue more shares.
Yes.
They issue more shares. They buy more Bitcoin. That drives the price of Bitcoin up. That drives the MNAV up. Then they can issue more shares. Like, ironically enough, that like Financial Times hit piece that they did on Saylor and strategy.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, that graphic that they created to show that little flywheel was one of the best explanations of what
it works. Yeah, that works to explain
how it works.
Yeah.
Right. It does a really good job of explaining it. How many people actually understand that? How many people actually think, and even Bitcoin among Bitcoiners, and I've had to answer this question. Michael Saylor is just taking on debt to buy Bitcoin. How many people think that?
Yeah, a bunch probably.
That's not really true.
No.
There's a lot of nuance to that.
Wow, the N-word. Oh my God, hardly ever uttered on this program. I you know what? I agree with you. I think that it's true that people view this as taking debt to buy Bitcoin, partially because
liquidation price. How many times have you said, "Oh, what's MicroStrategy?"
Everybody wants to. Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know. Yeah. They don't get it that it's converts, right? But you know what? In their defense, when you look at the tweets from Strategy on like issuance days, what do they say? Right? They issued bonds. And so like that's code for debt for a lot of people. They understand what a bond is in terms of the government bonds and things of this nature. And so they read it like that. I kind of blame Strategy for that, not necessarily the individual investor. And then don't forget, like I mentioned, because people have this slant against Saylor, they read it in the least favorable way possible, right? The least generous interpretation is the one that they take with them and the one they pass along, and they become a node for this, dare I say misinformation? I think I would probably call it that, because some people should know better, right? When I look at like friends of the show, like Kevin Muir or even Doomberg, he's spoken negatively about that strategy as well in his letter. And I think it's kind of picking and choosing how you view that strategy because you don't like Bitcoin necessarily.
I think that it's, if you don't like Bitcoin right off the bat, you have a bias.
Yeah.
And it'll be difficult for you to get it.
Yeah.
Now, some people can still get it, but that's a hard jump.
Should we talk about? Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
I'm not, aside from just listening to the podcast 40 hours a week, like I actually do know a little bit about finance and economics. Like I actually do. It took me a long time to sit down and actually learn what these guys are doing over at Strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while.
I only know it like from a rudimentary sort of entry level.
Yeah, and I watch MSTR True North every Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And I probably understand 95% of what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that probably puts me into the top decile of watchers of that show.
You're the top 1% of the top 95%.
I'm probably in the top 5 to 10, 5%.
top 3, top 7.
And I don't understand all of it. And I don't understand all of it. So how many people out there are pretty heavily invested in this stock and don't understand?
Okay, help me.
And how many people are out there talking shit about it that understand even less?
What if they don't understand it that well? Is my question. MSTR True North is an interesting case study. Sometimes I used to listen to MSTR True North when it was like just the Twitter space or whatever every couple of weeks.
When Ryquant was there.
Yeah. Oh. I would turn it on and they were calling, the kid analysts or whatever. I thought that was pretty funny. Ever since that Tim Kotzman guy told me that 225 wasn't that much to squat and then wouldn't post a picture of his physique, I just assume he's a loser milk bag clown. So
shots fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't post physique, like you're a loser. So anyway, that aside, I look at the MSTR True North guys and I think to myself, okay, yeah, they were invested in the stock for sure. But now what are they invested in? Specifically like Punter and Kotzman, their whole life now revolves around that stock. Punter quit his job. Yeah.
Brand.
Yeah. He quit his fucking job to talk about a stock. Like, I make fun of my buddy R. Bill Simmons' podcast for having a podcast about a subreddit about a podcast. But like, I'm not sure which is worse. At least R. Bill Simmons still has his day job. Punter quit his day job to talk about a stock, to talk about a guy who is pumping his stock on the internet. More or less, this is what he does now, right? And there's something admirable about that level of commitment. But at the same time, now it's another guy who's got a pretty big financial interest, not only in the price of the stock, but in the conversation around the price of the stock and the conversation around Saylor and the conversation. And admittedly, I think not enough people know, even guys who say they're experts on Twitter, and there are many who say they're experts on Twitter, don't know a fucking thing. Many people are watching this guy and saying, yeah, he's right. But they don't know if he's right. And I think a lot of the times those MSTR True North guys don't know if they're right or not. They're interpreting things like someone reading an ancient religious text, like this is what Mike Saylor means when he says X and Y. He means,
I don't know.
Maybe he means A and B. And sometimes it's not all the time. They do point to a lot of data. They are data driven over there. I'll give them that. But other times they're interpreting the Old Testament, and that's not a game you want to be in when your entire life, career, and investment portfolio revolves around the implicated ticker symbol. And so I have a bit of a problem with that too, if I'm being honest.
It's worked out pretty well for them so far.
So far is pretty important, wouldn't you say? It hasn't been that long. What do we say in Bitcoin all the time? We're so early, but somehow MSTR is a done deal. I don't know, man. Bitcoin treasuries are a done deal. I don't know.
Those guys doing calls and leaps and all these things.
Yeah.
That in itself is, forget
dangerous.
About MicroStrategy.
Yeah.
That is dangerous in any stock. And that requires a level of understanding that I don't have, and I don't probably never want to have, like that type of. So they're doing that type of strategy, doing these long dated calls on a stock that's incredibly volatile, and it worked out for them so far. It would seem like, right,
to date, yeah. I mean, sure.
And think about what that does to your bias.
100%. Right? Obviously, Priestess in the chat.
What does that do?
Priestess in the chat, like, oh my God, carrying water for the punter. We don't know anything about his life and why he actually quit his job. We fucking know he did the video talking about he quit his job because he wanted to talk about MSTR.
Good for him. He's living the dream.
He's doing what he wants to do, for sure.
Yeah.
And there's something admirable about that, like I said. But to your point, Boomer, what would that do to your bias? It would amplify it hundreds of times,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would that's a hell of an anchoring bias. If you've just went 100x on some long dated options way out of the money, right? That you just put $1,000 on something that just went 5,000x, right?
Yeah. What else should we talk about?
We didn't talk about GameStop. I thought we were going to start. I thought we were going to start with GameStop.
I just I don't care about GameStop. I'm the wrong guy, honestly, to be doing this conversation because I just don't give a fuck about much of this stuff. But the GameStop thing, I mean, this guy, talk about a master of cult, stock cult followings, whatever. Whether it was the Wall Street Bets saga from years ago and now Bitcoin these days. Legend, like just doing whatever he can to pump that stock price except sell video games. True financial genius. I mean, what did they buy today? They bought 4,100 Bitcoin, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They announced that they bought it. Didn't tell us what they paid.
Yeah.
Didn't tell us when they bought.
Predator, I think Predator found it somewhere.
It was like 108 or something. 107?
Yeah. And then so it ended up being just a little over 500 million, something like that.
They have about $1.5 million raised and allocated towards buying Bitcoin.
Are they doing bonds too? They're doing debt?
Well, they had cash on hand, right?
Yeah, but are they doing
Then
debt
they
too or
issued
no?
shares at the money.
That?
I think they issued shares at the money.
Okay.
They're sitting on a ton of cash too. Like,
sure.
Like I think 4 billion, if I'm not mistaken. MicroStrategy in itself is a weird, not MicroStrategy. Geez, we moved on. GameStop in itself is its own crazy ass cult stock, right? That has a wild story to it. But here's a company that was left for dead, shorted to shit. You know, we know the story with the apes and the Reddit and all the way to Hollywood making a movie. And fucking Robin Hood. Robin Hood in the fucking movie is the villain. It's like one of the main villains. Did you see who's Bitcoin 2025 on the first page of sponsors?
No.
Robin Hood.
Oh, it's Robin Hood. Yeah. We talked about this on Monday.
Of all the people, like Robin Hood.
I don't know what I think about the GameStop thing. I keep coming back to like, and maybe this shouldn't matter to me at all, but I keep coming back to how does this make us look to people who want to come into the space? Everyone knows the GameStop story. Everyone knows how retarded that got, 5 years ago.
Why do you care about how we look?
You're right. But I do care because I think that now we're entering the next sort of epoch of investing in Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, using Bitcoin, all these things. And like you mentioned earlier, okay, you need high levels of capital, like significant capital inflows to move from 100,000 to 1 million. Okay. And that's the next step here. So we have to attract that capital somehow. And it's going to be harder to attract that capital. Why do we have
to attract it?
Well, because if we want the price to go up, we need to attract capital. Like we need,
it's going to come. Just like Omar said to Brother Mouzon.
I don't know, man.
Worrying about it is like worrying if the sun's going to come up.
I think there's something to be said about the attractiveness to stuff like, I don't know, endowments, pensions, things of this nature. Now, there's some pensions obviously buying IBIT and MSTR already, but as a general rule, I think we could do better and would be better off if GameStop wasn't making headlines for buying Bitcoin, trying to resurrect its business. And you know what? Okay, so tell me why. Sure. Give me the other side. Give me the opposite case.
Like, first of all, like what do people like the broader the broader financial world, what do they think about Bitcoins? I think it's actually improved quite a bit. I don't.
I talk to some macro normies, like big name macro normies from time to time, just because I know them from the podcast and they send me messages when we're on a rip and they still think we're nuts. So I can't, like, if you think we're nuts at 100, I don't know how it's going to change at 1 million, but it is what it is.
I don't think it matters what people think about us. Like, I think the GameStop is interesting. Like, they're still a pretty heavily shorted stock that has cash on hand.
Yeah.
So that is the perfect company to buy Bitcoin, in my opinion. Now, they're a relatively large company by market cap.
Yeah.
But do you want to be holding GameStop short now if they have 10 right up now 5,000, but let's say that gets to 20,000 coins on hand, and that represents a 10%, 15, 20% of their market cap, and you're sitting there shorting that company, knowing that on a Saturday afternoon, Bitcoin can spike $20,000, and then Monday morning you show up and your firm is completely done.
Yeah.
Now, 4 or 5 years ago, when the craziness was happening with GameStop, they had the off switch, right? And they fucking used it.
Yeah, big time. Everyone who doesn't know that, like Robinhood turned off buys on GameStop.
Yeah. Go watch Dumb Money. It wasn't a great movie. It wasn't like I went into that movie thinking it was going to be as good as The Big Short, and I left being pretty disappointed. But that being said, it wasn't awful. It just wasn't as good as The Big Short.
Yeah,
It wasn't
okay.
awful. It was mid, right? But they turned off the fucking button.
Yeah.
Right? They can't turn off the button if they hold 20,000 Bitcoin or whatever the number is, X amount of percentage of Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin spikes on the weekend. That is going to make short sellers shit their pants.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, it's a decent defense against the short sellers, right? To have a Bitcoin position that will pump your stock if things go up.
What if it's just that? What if it's just
that's not a bad strategy, honestly, Boomer.
Cohen goes on TV and says, "Look, yeah, like I've been talking to the Saylor guy. I've been reading Bitcoin magazine. I've been listening to the Canadian Bitcoin podcast. This Bitcoin thing. Like we got cash on hand, and I see the volatility, and I'm not going to buy too much of it, but I'm going to buy enough of it that it's cash on hand that we're not quite sure what to do with this money anyway." And, we don't want the short sellers to short our fucking stock. So this is insurance against people coming in aggressively shorting our stock because we don't want someone to turn off the fucking buy button like they did last time.
I do like that. Let's get out of here on two questions. One that I'm pulling from John in the chat. I won't say that the company needs to report its financials in terms of Bitcoin, but let's take it a different direction. What is the likelihood, in your view, that over the next, let's say 2 years, a Mag 7 company makes a Bitcoin buy and publicizes it and defends it and tries to use it to get other people to embrace Bitcoin? The Mag 7 right now is what? NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Tesla, maybe. Facebook and Netflix. Is that it? Fan mags, right? Fat Man, I think it's called.
Apple? I don't think Netflix is in there.
I don't know. Well, let's say we'll
doesn't matter.
Whatever. You get the idea.
Probably not.
Okay.
I think Facebook Meta is probably the leader in the clubhouse of being the most likely. Maybe Apple would do something with Apple Pay and say like, "Oh, we now accept Bitcoin, and your Apple Pay account now has a Lightning wallet." I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, if that happened, but I would be pretty surprised if they held any of it on reserves.
Okay. And then maybe the second question, last one. There's a lot of talk about this cycle underperforming others in terms of the bottom to top. I think to match the 2017 to 2020 epoch, or 2020, or was it 20 to 24, whatever it is, we'd have to get up past 300 or something like that. Do I have that right? 300 US. It's a significant jump from here anyway. Should we be happy or disappointed with that? I'll answer first. I think we should be happy about it because less volatility is probably good long term. Although the huge gains may be gone for new entrants, I still think probably it's better to not have these 100x moves over the course of 4 years or 8 years, 10x over 4 years, whatever. Where do you come down on that?
I don't give a shit about price. I legitimately like. Ask anybody who really knows me. Like, I legitimately don't give a fuck about price. I care more about getting my 40 hours of Bitcoin podcast listening in than I care about the price of Bitcoin. That is 100% true. I had a meetup last week, and just for fun, the guys, we were talking about nobody gives a shit about Bitcoin. Nobody knows. Like that's how nobody knows anything.
I think that's true. Yeah.
We're about 1/10 the size of gold, right now.
Ish, I think, yeah. Well, are we 2 trillion? 2 trillion, I think. Let's say.
Yeah, okay, give or take 1/10 of the price of gold. Mm-hmm. So if we 10x from here and we were the same price as gold, let's say we 12x because gold went up a little bit, but we caught up to gold.
We made parity, yeah.
We made parity with gold. Do you still think anybody would give a shit? No, it wouldn't fucking matter, Joey. It wouldn't matter. I asked around. I literally, like, we go to the same restaurant all the time, so I asked a couple of the servers. It's like, these are just normal, mid-20s people, right?
Yeah.
I asked them, what's the price of Bitcoin? No idea. Okay, What's the price of gold? What's the price of gold? No idea. They didn't know the price of gold. So they don't know the price of gold. They don't know the price of Bitcoin. So if we go up 10x, 12x, 15x, it's not going to fucking matter at all. Won't matter.
Okay.
So...
Okay.
If it goes to 300 from here at 3x's, it's like, I don't know, in a way, I guess like my bags will be pumped if I had Bitcoin. Again, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that I have any.
May or may not.
I may or may not have any. But at the same time, my daily DCA, my branded BitAxe,
Yeah.
Canadian Bitcoiners podcast BitAxe,
Yeah.
that spews 50 sats a day, right? You know, those 50 sats a day that I get from that BitAxe would be worth a lot more, right? If it went up.
That's the hope.
But if you're DCAing, don't you want it to stay low?
Yeah, I do. And I think that a lot of
Don't you
people, to
want
your
it?
point. Yeah. And John in the chat saying the same thing. Like, I'm not sure those people matter. And maybe none of those things matter. Yeah.
Do
none of
we
it
matter?
matters. I don't know. Only to a few people. Tell me a bit about what you're doing. Where can people find out about you? You're running the meetups. You mentioned that. I don't want to leave without you plugging the meetup. So go ahead.
Yeah, I host a meetup in Ottawa, so just find me on Twitter somewhere and just Ottawa Bitcoin meetup. You'll get a, and if you're not in Ottawa, go to a meetup in your town, go to a conference, meet people in real life. I'm doing a Bitcoin walk this weekend, so
Nice.
Bitcoin walk. You're aware of this? The guy in Scotland.
We did. I was on Why Are We Bullish with him last year.
Cool.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
the best.
So I'm one of two people in Canada that are part of his little cabal, and I host a walk in Ottawa. We walk around the Ottawa Canal, so we're doing that for the summer. Yeah, I'm doing that. You can always find me Monday nights, 7 p.m. in the chat.
That's right.
I think I started episode 38. I think it was episode 38.
I don't know. What are we on now? We're on like 114 or something. Maybe more than that. I have no idea.
More than that.
Are we? I have no idea.
Yeah,
we got to be like 200 now, I think, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So I'm episode 38 was my first one. I think I've missed one.
Love it.
Maybe two. I think I've one or two.
Is it true
And I
that
had
you
good reasons.
Is it true that you watch CBP on dates?
I have watched CBP on a date before.
I love it.
More than once. Like more than once.
I love it. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
God
So
bless.
I'm putting look, and listen to Bitcoin podcast. Support Bitcoin podcast.
40 hours a week, man.
40
Do your
hours a
40
week.
hours a week.
Get those hours in.
Don't fuck it up. We'll see you next time, boys and girls. Thanks to Boomer for coming out, and take care of yourself.